West Coast Avengers.
Welcome back to another episode of the West Coast Avengers. I'm your host, Dave. And before I bring you today's great interview with Jimmy Palmiotti, please like it and comment down below. And don't forget, I have a new podcast called Direct Edition. It's on every streaming platform, as well as it has its own YouTube channel. You can find those links down below, as well as every link pertaining to Jimmy Palmiotti, including his Twitter, his new Kickstarter, and paper films. And without further ado, I bring to you my interview and chat with Jimmy Palmiotti. Take it away, Dave. I got a special guest today. His bibliography could take me at least an hour and a half just to sort through and speak about. Jimmy Palmiotti, he co-created Ash and Painkiller Jane in the 90s with his buddy Joe Quesada. He's got epic runs on Jonah Hex and also Harley Quinn, which with his wife Amanda Connor reinvented that character. Power Girl as well. A great graphic novel that you all know, The Pro. Garth Ennis also involved with that. He's also been involved in animated series, video games, advertising, and also the second guest in a row to be in a Kevin Smith movie. Jimmy Palmiotti, how we doing?
Good. I was only in it for like 5 seconds, thank God.
Well, I had Jim Mahfood on a couple weeks ago, and he was in Clerk. No, he was in Dogma.
Dogma, yeah. I was on the set of Dogma, and Kevin offered if I wanted to be in it, I'd have to stay there 2 more days because they're going to make me up as a zombie and kill me. And I was like, I said, there's a tent of guys dying to do that. Let them do it. I want to go home. It was fun. It was fun because we got to meet, Salma Hayek and Chris Rock and everybody. That was a blast. And then Kevin always has, of course, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. They're on everything that he shot. They were pretty much in back then. So I'd see those guys playing basketball and pulled a favor from Ben Affleck years later, asked him to write the intro for the Daredevil collection that we did. Nice. Great guy, really, really fun, sweet guy, just loves comics But Kevin, man, what's he doing now? What's he doing now, Kevin? He's always up to something.
He is. I mean, he's a I don't even know he's like the leader of the Hollywood comics scene. Like he loved comics. He became a filmmaker and then said, "Okay, I'm going to champion all this stuff, and then I'm going to get involved with comics." Yeah,
actually, I say a lot of the success we had with Marvel Knights was because. Not only did we put out some really solid books, but Kevin was out there doing talk shows, and we were doing talk shows promoting comic books where people before that weren't even thinking about comics too much. They knew who the characters were, and I think Marvel really didn't have all their movies out yet. They just had Blade, I think, at the time. And Kevin was going on late night TV talking about Daredevil, and it definitely helped when we launched Marvel Knights. It launched like a hand grenade.
Oh yeah,
and we had people buying comics that never bought comics before because I think Kevin was a large part of that. And then everything changed, right? Everything. Right. Then superheroes were everywhere. But we were doing them at that point where they were just in the small audience of comic book people.
Sure. And we'll get to that. I wanted to take it back. So you grew up in Brooklyn. What area? What neighborhood?
East Flatbush, Flatbush and Avenue J. Actually, where Bugs Bunny was born, in Flatbush and Avenue J, in one of the cartoons. And I remember as a kid, we were watching TV, and Bugs Bunny said he was born in Avenue J, Flatbush. And I looked at my dad, and my dad's like, "Could be anywhere around here." And it's like, "Oh my god!" But the Flatbush section.
Yeah, and that's where my dad grew up. We were talking about it yesterday. He was telling me about a store on Avenue J called the Leading Mail, where he used to shop for clothes.
I remember the Leading Mail. So your dad grew up literally right around there.
Yeah. Just about. He's about 15 years older than you. But yeah, you Brooklyn people are very proud of it. And it's something that I was always aware of, that people that grew up in Brooklyn would never say New York City. They would say Brooklyn.
Yeah, did he collect comics, your dad, or no?
But yeah, he was a comics buyer. I mean, he his mom threw out everything, all his cards, his Mickey Mantles, all that stuff. But he still has. It's funny, he still has all his Classics Illustrated, which aren't really worth anything, but they're great.
Of all the books to keep, what those comics were good for insulation.
Yeah,
but he probably used to go to a place called My Friend's Bookstore in Flatbush. That was the biggest comic shop back then. And then his Heroes Hideout was the other one.
Mm-hmm.
But I guarantee your dad, you know, how old's your dad?
He's going to be 78 this year, 79.
Yeah, so he's older than me, but he's probably got his stories, you know.
Oh yeah,
stories.
sneaking into Ebbets Field and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But so the stories you just mentioned, do you remember, to your best recollection, like your first experience with comics as a reader?
Yeah, you know, so my brothers had comics. I have two older brothers, and they had comics around the house. And I don't think it was until I was like sixth grade, maybe fifth to sixth grade, where I started actually hunting them down. And I used to go to a place, there was a card and a card store, like a greeting cards and stuff like that on Nostrand Avenue and Avenue I, called Stage.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Stage Stationeers and stuff. It was right next to the art store over there. And he had racks of comics. He had them like racked up with the magazines. And I used to go in there and like every week and buy a comic or two. And they were like, I think they were 15 cents or 20 cents at the time. Mm-hmm. And every week I went there, he would ask, you know, he'd ask me, like, he would talk to me. The guy that owned the place must have been maybe in his 50s. You know, he'd talk to me. And I eventually we're talking. I said, look, I'd buy more books if you didn't ruin them with the rope around them. He tied them up with rope.
Yeah.
I said, if you give me mint books, I will probably take one of almost everything you get. So he started having them deliver them in boxes, and I would go there, and I want to say it was Monday or Tuesday morning, and I would go through and I'd pick out like a stack of books. Mm-hmm. And then I would buy them, and it was like $2 worth, you know, every week and for forever. And he would put them aside for me. Before he shelved them, he let me go through them. And that's how I started collecting. And I'll tell you a really funny story. It wasn't until like maybe, I want to say 30 years later, maybe 30 something years later, I was in an area of Brooklyn called Mill Basin. Mm-hmm. And I noticed there's a place called Stage, you know, Stage, the same name.
Yeah.
Place, of course, that I knew closed many, many, many years ago. But I went there, and it was a card shop, and it was the same thing, but a little more modern. And there was a young guy working there, maybe in his 30s. And I said, you know, I used to go to a place on Nostrand Avenue and get my comics and drive the guy crazy. And he goes, oh, that's my dad's store. That was my dad's store. And I was like, oh, my God, I drove your dad crazy. And he goes, you want to see him? He's in the back.
Oh, my God.
And he was this very older gentleman, you know, he must have been maybe like 81, 82. And I went back, he walked me back, and I saw him, and I said, I don't know if you remember me. And I said, I was the kid that would make you put the books aside. And he looks at me for a minute, and then he goes, I remember you. He goes, every week you would go through the books, and if they were bent, you would say, no good. And you wouldn't buy. And I said, yeah. And he says, so what do you do now for a living? and I told him, actually, I write and I draw comics. And he's like, oh, my God. He goes, really? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, oh, well, that makes total sense. It was just so funny seeing somebody like that. But that was how I got started. I started collecting. And then I remember in seventh grade, I met a couple of people in my school that I never knew collected comics. And we were talking one day. Mm-hmm. And this guy mentioned that blah, 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 Daredevil. And I said, do you buy comics? He goes, yeah. And he goes, I have a collection. I think his name was Raymond Fazzi. I'm remembering like randomly. And he took me to his house, and he had tons and tons of boxes of comics. Wow. And I was like, do you trade? And he goes, yeah, what do you got? You know? And so I got started at an early age, and I had an uncle that my Uncle Louis had a barbershop. And in the barbershop, he had stacks of comics. So I would go in and trade Louis like 2 new comics, and he would give me like 10 old ones because he said, I'm just going to throw them away. So I realized that a lot of the comic shop, a lot of the barbershops in Brooklyn had stacks of comics. So I would go in and say, hey, if you want to update, I'll give you 3 books for like 20 old ones. And they're like, yeah, here. And I started building my collection that way. And then through the Salvation Army on Flatbush Avenue, down in the Junction, your dad will know what I'm talking about. They had a thing that they sold comics. I want to say it was like $1 for every 5 pounds.
Wow.
And again, it was the guys, they would tie them up with ropes with magazines. And I told the guy, if you separate them and put them in a box for me, I'll buy them every time you got them. And like once a month, I go in and buy like 5 pounds worth of comics or 10 pounds worth of comics. And it was random stuff, but it was only $1 or $2.
Sure.
And I get like around 100, 150 comics that were like from the 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, random pick. And that lasted a while until that place closed. But
Right.
that's how, you know, we didn't have comic shops. We only had one store that was called My Friend's Bookstore, which had back issues. And actually, I did buy, Paul Levitz used to work there, by the way.
Oh, wow.
When he was younger. And but I did buy my Fantastic Four #1 there in the most beautiful shape you've ever seen. And this would be probably 76 or 77, and I paid $60 for it. That was a lot of money
at that time, yeah.
But it was the most beautiful copy you've ever seen. And he had a box full of them, and I picked out the one that I wanted. And then a couple of years later, I sold it for over like $1,500. I sold it for, and I bought a used car.
All right.
And that became my hotel on wheels for like the next couple of years.
You know, really funny you say that, because I hadn't owned a car from when I moved from New York in 2014 to Seattle. I hadn't had a car in almost 10 years.
Right.
And I ended up getting a Batman Adventures 12. I 9.8'd it. And at the height, I sold it for $3,500 and put that towards my first new car.
I mean,
in 10 years.
Thank you, Harley Quinn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I you know, that book used to be in all the quarter bins, dollar bins. That book was until later on. You know, later on it became a book. I think when we started, it was still approachable.
Sure.
And like once we got to Harley 10 or 11, and the book was outselling everything. I think it was at one point it was the #1 book for DC. All of a sudden, the prices on all that stuff went crazy. And I couldn't even afford my own books at some point. I was laughing. I'm like, and then Harley's a series that they told us, well, it'll probably get canceled after 6 issues. So you guys do whatever you want, you know?
It did the opposite, complete opposite. If you could go on one end of the spectrum and see the other end is what actually happened.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's been a crazy career.
Yeah, well, and in that, when you started, you know, getting into comics, but I also want to just point out that was like one of the most New York stories you could ever tell. Is that who are the artists that you were looking at that young age when you started checking out?
So I had, you know, so we're talking about early 70s now, and I Barry Smith Conan, Bernie Wrightson Swamp Thing, Mike Kaluta's Shadow, we're talking Jim Stranko, Captain America, of course Kirby, and John Buscema Conan as well, and John Buscema Avengers, and Craig Russell Killraven, and Paul Gulacy Master of Kung Fu, Mike Klug Frankenstein. Let me think. If I go down, there were so many. Jack Davis in Mad Magazine, you know, and Mort Drugger, and then like Little Annie Fanny in Playboy, you know, Kurtzman and those guys, very influential. And just like these really, this studio, you know, Bernie Wrightson and Kaluta and Barry Smith were like huge influences for me, because they were doing something. They were taking the comics from comic art to art. You know, they really treated the subject matter seriously. And, you know, Craig Russell, too, like P. Craig Russell on Killraven, and Gulacy and Stranko. You know, Stranko was amazing. Yeah. Gulacy was the Stranko that put it out every month, you know?
Sure.
And I remember those Master of Kung Fu's when he inked himself. And then I think the other book was Saber that he came out with. It was a creator-owned book that was like, it was like nothing I've ever seen. I have some of the original art from Saber. Over the years, and I got 4 pages from the book. But these are the guys that were like, I was looking at and studying, and Bernie Wrightson, I was looking at how does he do the brush strokes, and, you know, and so these were my heroes. You know, Kirby on FF, there was also some artists I associated with books.
Sure.
You know, like Kirby on the FF, because I love the FF, and Kurt Swan on Superman. And then when Neil Adams came in, and I think this is my theory, that Neil Adams saved DC Comics, because Neil went and drew Superman and Batman like nobody's ever seen them, and all of a sudden these characters were cool again. Because there was a time when I was younger, nobody could care less about Batman and Superman on some weird level. And then Neil came in and did his thing. But so many influences, so many amazing artists that Yeah, to this day. And then years later, I became friends with them and even worked with a bunch of them, which is like I said, it's like a dream come true. I remember meeting George Perez in a hotel in Sheepshead Bay, doing a signing, and he was doing Logan's Run at the time, you know.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And just like, you know, when you're in New York during that time, it was like nothing else. Like everybody was living around there.
mm-hmm.
Frazetta was another big influence of mine. You know, anybody with a brush, Al Williamson, and
Oh yeah,
so many guys. I have. You look on my walls at home. I have a lot of their art. You know, not great pieces, but whatever I could afford. You know,
well,
I'm a gift.
So looking at some of those guys,
Yeah.
and being really into them, is that one of the kind of reasons so you're able to kind of adapt with your inking style and you know, change it up when you
You know,
need to?
with the inking, it's really funny because I all I ever wanted to do is make the artist happy. The
Mhm.
editor, yeah, they're happy they got the book and yada yada yada, right?
Mhm.
But I felt like if I made the artist, like if I made the artwork look like even better than what they put down, or made it, enhanced it so they were so happy that they would constantly ask for me, and I thought that was the way I was going to get into the business, is to blow away the guy that I'm working with, and you know, and make sure that the work I'm doing for him is the best he can get from anybody. And that was always my theory with getting work, how I was going to get work and how I was going to sustain it, because there was a lot of inkers that are much better than me. I mean, I look at Klaus Janson and Al Williamson, and those two guys are still like, you know, Klaus is still somebody I'm like, I can never do what he does. And Al, I used to bug Al all the time. He used to sit, you know, he invited me up to his house. I would sit there and, you know, have him show me how to do things. Even Frazetta, I went to Fazetta's house once and he showed me how to use a brush and do hair and stuff like that. I just wanted to get better all the time. I still do.
Yeah.
I just don't ink that much anymore. But it was, for me, it was like the way to get in is to be the best. And how do I get the best? I learned from the best. And those were the guys that inspired me.
No, and that's inspirational in itself, because it just means like the more you surround yourself with great things to look at, to take in, people to talk to, then you're just going to suck up like a sponge. And then when you're ready to output, it's going to come out great.
It's how I started collecting original art. I started buying comic book art. They weren't great pages. They were like the cheap ones. But I would take them home and I dissect how they did stuff on them. I look at the original art. I'd say, okay, that's how he does the backgrounds, and how is he doing that? How is he using the brush to get that? And I would stick tracing paper over the original pages, and I would try to imitate the brush lines. And and that's how I learned a lot. And you know, and that's also why I started collecting. I remember buying a bunch of, and this is the 80s. I bought a stack of these John Romita Jr., Al Williamson Daredevil pages that had no Daredevil on them.
Yeah.
Right? And they were like 10 and 15 bucks a page. And I bought a stack of them. And I would just tracing paper, and I would try to do the backgrounds, the suits, the way that people, you know, everything, shading and everything. And so people go, oh, don't you want this page as Daredevil? You know, it's only $40. And I'd be like, nah, just give me those ones with Foggy getting a sandwich, you know.
Right. Or some subway scene or something like that.
It didn't matter to me. I needed to learn the basic stuff. You know, it's funny because comics are only 10% of the superhero costume. I mean, everything, you have to learn how to do everything else on a page. And it's great when you get a script where the heroes are running around all the time, but 90% of comics are people talking. And, you know, you look at John Romita Sr., how well he did Peter Parker and his mom, Aunt May, and the girls, and like none of that was with Spider-Man in an outfit in his suit. It was all like, you know, Peter in a nightclub with them, or in a coffee shop,
or in Central Park or whatever.
And if you can't do that, then there's no connection. The reader doesn't connect with the character. If it's just a guy in a superhero suit, there's no connection, I believe. You can't have Batman comics without Bruce Wayne. You can't have Spider-Man without Peter Parker. You have to have that human connection. And the guys who drew the people the best, to me, were the ones I loved the most.
You know, it's funny. Might be one of the reasons why. So my intro to comics, the first thing that I fell in love with was the first ongoing Wolverine series, and that was Claremont writing with Buscema on the art duties, and
Wilson Kevich.
And Sienkiewicz, and Wolverine in a costume was not in those first bunch of issues.
Nope. He was running around like Shanghai.
Yeah, he was in Madripoor in Shanghai, and he was Pat, and he was Logan. So I wonder if that's one of the reasons why I took to that so much, is because like it was different than what I would have been introduced to if I had started reading like Byrne's X-Men or something like that.
Right. I think when you read that, you can see yourself in that character. Like you're in this place in this strange land, and I think it's a little tougher when you're reading the X-Men and they're on another planet, or they're dealing with the Starjammers or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
that you can relate to. Although I think Chris Claremont did an amazing job getting us to relate to those people. But it's a little harder to relate to Captain Marvel or Warlock by Jim Starlin. But the artwork was so stunning, you just had to buy every one of them.
Yeah. It's. I mean, nobody was doing anything close to that at that time.
No, he's another one. He's another one that, again, I grew up with. I don't have any art of his, but man, I love his artwork. It's just the pages I want of his.
So expensive.
They're unapproachable. I mean, you're talking $30,000 for the couple I looked at, and I was like, I need to pay, you know, my bills. You know, it must be good to be rich.
Yeah. Well, we met at OAX, and that's the thing. Like, it's such an interesting world to be a part of and see. And I've bought some big pages recently, but yeah, I can't afford that atmosphere of pages.
No, I mean, you know, look, you buy what you can. I mean, I'm a fan of a lot of new artists, so I try to get stuff that I can. And then a lot of the guys working for me on some of my Kickstarters, I kind of buy the pages. Like Joe Linsner's one that I love everything Joe does. So when he asked me, he said, "Would you want like to buy the original?" I'm like, yes, I'll, you know, and he gives me a nice break, and he's the sweetest guy, like just a great guy. But I own all those covers. I'm like, yeah, man, you know, it's my inside way to get them, because once he puts them on the table, people grab them. Like I was at a show in Baltimore where Joe Linsner had the portfolio on Friday night, and by Saturday, half of the book was empty. And I was like, Joe, what the hell? And he's like, yeah, maybe I should charge more. I'm like, maybe. I'm glad you made so many people happy, though. Holy shit, you know, that's pretty amazing. So, you know, but the market, you know, OAX, it will be. I didn't even do the rest of the cons for the year, but it is my favorite con of the year. Yeah. So, because I sat in a room full of people that love the same thing I do, and what a special show that was.
It was, and it was, and you know, beyond that, it was a throwback to old cons where you could have conversations with people without having to talk over every other person.
Yeah,
and the auction was great. You and Nikki did a great job for your first time.
Yeah, it was our first time. So we did have some issues, but we did get 91 pieces out the door. You know,
you did.
I told Nikki, I said, you know, as much as we screwed up here and there, the audience did not leave. Like everyone stayed, and you know, I'll just say next year it'll go a lot smoother, because we finally figured it out by the end what we need to do. But like I said, that whole show, those 3 days were pure adrenaline, like from everybody. Meaning, everyone wanted that show to do well. Yeah.
There was,
and then the guys in charge did better than we all thought they would.
Yeah, even if they didn't think that they did, we all know that they did.
Oh my God! I mean, we're talking about open bars at night, and you know, the auction and the dinner. I mean, it was just a real great community. I gotta tell you, I felt safe in that room with everybody. I really felt like everyone's here for the same reason, and we're all having a great time. And I remember that Friday night, we're all outside eating and drinking and talking at tables, and I was like, look how social everybody is.
Yeah.
You know.
For a bunch of people that by nature aren't.
No, and you know, I nothing made me happy, because I can drink a little bit, and late at night I was seeing people outside with their portfolios open, showing off their collections, and I just go over the shoulder and I go, oh, dude, that's an awesome page, and I don't know, it was something I wish more cons had.
Sure.
But I'm looking forward to the second one. I think they announced the dates already. So
yeah, they did announce the dates. I'll be booking my trip, and
yeah.
I had an excellent time. I filmed, you know, like 6 hours of footage and put together a video for everybody to see.
Where do you live, Dave? Where do you live?
I'm in the Northwest, so I'll be seeing you in 2 weeks. I'm outside of Seattle in Tacoma.
Oh, okay, yeah. We'll see you in a week and a half, maybe next week.
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, Orlando's quite a trip to get there, but
you know, I get but it's the reason, you know, it's like go there, visit the parents, and then come home.
Okay, your parents are there. That's great.
Yeah.
That little extra there you got. That's awesome.
Exactly. So, but yes, getting back, I did have the question of, I know you didn't get into comics until you were in your 30s, right?
Yeah. Now, so I did comics when I was in high school, and I realized there was no money in it, and then I went into advertising, and around 28, 29, I started doing some stuff on the side for friends, and then it was around 30 when I met with Mark Texera and started helping him do backgrounds, and that's how I got into Marvel after that.
So I know you went to high school with Mark, but when you were in high school, did you guys collaborate or did you self-publish anything? Did you get involved in zine culture at all?
You know, the school had a zine they put out, and Mark had something in it, and I had something in it, but both of us wouldn't want to see it again. But so when I was in high school, one of my teachers, Mr. Ferguson, recommended me. I did background, quick job for Chick Stone, but then I worked with a couple of guys, Dave Simons and a couple of guys, and I ghosted inking on some books. I ghosted inking on Howard the Duck and Time Warp magazine for DC, and it just didn't pay very well. I honestly, I couldn't see how I would make a living doing this.
Sure.
But I loved doing it. And I think that helped me because I went to college and then I got into advertising, and I kind of learned how to make a living. I sort of learned how, okay, this is what I have to do. I can't do what these guys are doing. I have to be smarter than them about the business. I have to learn about the business. I have to learn about ownership and stuff like that. I can't be a guy that's just a freelance guy for hire, because I think in the end you kind of get screwed. You know, there's not much of a life in it. And if you want to make comics your life, you want to make great comics, you have to kind of be happy.
Yeah, you have to. And and being happy also comes with being able to pay your bills and not worrying.
Yes.
You
know? You know, I went from before I left advertising, I left a very high-paying job to do comics, and I took a major hit for the first 3-4 years. I didn't get anywhere near what I was making in advertising, but I wanted it really bad. Yeah. So, you know, I took a hit, and I remember, you know, my I call them the ramen days of cheap frozen pizza and ramen noodles. But at the same time, I was not happier than when I was trying. You know, I saved some money when I left the other business, and I had some money in my pocket. So, you know, I just wanted it really bad, and somehow I was going to make this thing work.
Yeah. Well, that shows tenacity, but that also shows the true love for the medium. And just brief about your advertising career. You worked on movie posters, and Raging Bull was one of them.
I did. I worked for a gentleman named Bill Gold, who, if you look him up, he's a very famous poster designer. And we did design work and illustration work and everything for Raging Bull. There was a whole bunch. The main client was Malpaso, which was Clint Eastwood's company. Okay. So I think one of the first things I worked on when I went there, besides Raging Bull, was the Sudden Impact. Which was one of the Dirty Harry movies. And there's a famous poster. He has his gun out, and it's through a car window, and it's broken glass. And
I know that one.
That's all hand drawn. If you look at it, I drew the glass, and it's all hand drawn. Wow. It's a photo stripped on. This is before computers, where we'd actually have to take a photo, sand it down, put it on a fake head, and airbrush a body and all that kind of stuff. But I worked on a whole bunch of his movie posters for Bill. I also worked on for PepsiCo, which we worked on Pepsi campaigns, and then also for Maybelline. Did work for Maybelline, and these were big clients. We had big clients in our agency, but it was thankless work. You know, you were one of the people. I loved it for a while. I really loved it because I felt like, you know, I was doing some great stuff and everything. But you know, the comics were always in the back of my mind. I want to tell a story. I don't want to just do a single picture or an illustration or something. I want to tell a whole story. I want to work on. I just, you know, I never shook it. I always had it in the back of my head, and I always was buying. I still was buying comics now and again. that didn't go away. You know, there was the whole, everyone has it where I discovered girls, and then all of a sudden girls were my main focus and comics was shoved aside. But then I managed to figure out, girls and comics.
Yeah. Speaking of girls in comics, and probably a comic you probably want to forget.
Oh, Madonna. You know, so I did that cover. That's not horrible.
No, it's great. It's great.
That's back in I want to say that's 92 and 93, right? I don't even know.
You signed it. Yeah, it's signed 92. Yeah.
92. I was just getting into comics, right? And I was working for Tex. I was doing backgrounds for those books. And then I was trying to, I tried out for a pencil. That's all I wanted to do was pencil the books. And I did a couple of Marvel Comics Presents. I did a Namor 39, I think. Everyone thought it was Jay Lee, but it was me. And I just kept getting inking work. No matter what I penciled, there was always hey, you know what? We don't have that for you, but do you want these 4 books to ink, or do you want to do this new series? So, and the good news was I started getting artists asking for me on their books. Can you get Jimmy on the book? And so there was a point I was working at Marvel and DC, and I was doing 3 books a month.
Wow.
And I was winning these Wizard Awards for Best Anchor, which I knew other guys were better than me, but I kind of knew how to hustle better than those guys, and I knew how to put myself out there. When Joe and I did when we would do an event comics and then even Marvel Nights, we would drive up to Wizard Magazine and take some of the staff out for lunch. We knew how to. I told Joe, I said, trust me on this. My background is advertising. I know how to work a crowd. I know how to take them out. We get a couple of drinks, and then I say, hey, listen, that cover next month, we could do that for you if you want. But it was part of my background was how to deal with people, and of course they loved it that we were up there. There were 2 pros coming up to the office, and we made great friends with guys up there, Jim McLaughlin, Buddy Scalera, so many guys I love, Marie and Jen and all those just really great people working up there. Of course, Garrett, of course. But we understood how to work and try to get the work out there. We knew it was more than just doing the comic. We have to go out there and sell it.
It's the hustle.
And this is before the internet, right? All we had was Wizard magazines and conventions and regular press like TV and stuff. So we did a lot of that. And when Marvel Nights appeared, of course, we did a lot of TV and internet. We did the first internet comic book, which was that short Daredevil short we did. But the world was changing real quick,
Yeah.
And so we just had to keep up with it. That's all.
And so in that era, I mean, for me and most of the people my age, that grew up in the late 80s and 90s, you and Joe Quesada, were a team that there was never one without the other. And it was and that's how I learned who you were and who he was. Where did you meet Joe? I mean, he's in New York too.
Yeah, I met him though in San Diego. I think it was 92. I was online to get a hamburger, which you should never eat in San Diego Comic-Con. I was wanting to get a hamburger in the con, and I ran into Rodney Ramos, who was an artist I knew from Marvel. Nice guy, great artist. And he introduced me to Joe, and then Joe and I hit it off. We were talking, and then we hung out that night in some bar, and we ran into each other again. And then he was looking to do some more cover work, and I was actually designing covers for. I was doing these things at Marvel where I would do a small design, and they would buy it, and then they would hand it out to artists. So, at one point I put Joe on that list of guys to hand stuff out, and he was doing some stuff for DC. We just became friends, and then Image hit, and we were like, hey, we can do that. We'll be the East Coast guys, There
you go.
They didn't want us, but we wanted to do our own thing. So we put our money together, and we formed Event Comics, and just to see if it would work. And it worked out pretty good. And that's actually how we got Marvel Nights, because Marvel, the president of Marvel at the time was a guy named Joe Calamari. We call him Joey Squid, obviously, and that was his mob name. And but Garib was talking to them, and they were not having a good time. They were going into chapter 11 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they said, well, what can we experiment with? And he recommended Joe and I to maybe take a couple of books, see what we could do. And that's how Marvel Knights came. We had a couple of meetings. We insisted we get the penthouse of the Marvel's offices.
Yeah.
And then after that, they gave us a budget, and we just hired every friend we had to work on our books.
Well, I mean, it's very interesting because, you know, like you were saying before, I graduated high school in 97. I kind of like the boom bust kind of kicked me out of comics, right? Like that, the excess of it, you know, all that. And one of my good friends had given me somewhere in the late 90s, maybe early 2000, gave me Sandman to read, Preacher, Sin City, Watchmen, like all of the, you know, the best comics.
The prime,
yeah.
The cream of the crop. Yeah.
And within that, I started going that direction. But looking back at the Marvel Knights era now,
yeah,
I've read so much of that stuff, and it is such an interesting thing. And I spoke about this with Mahfood, because he did that Gen X special in the late 90s.
Yeah.
It was like, then all of a sudden you guys come on the scene with Marvel Knights, and the weirdest shit starts coming out, and it's all amazing at this point. Like, looking back at it now, where we are at comics,
right?
It's some of the best stuff that's ever come out in mainstream comics, and it ushered in this rebirth of Marvel that I know, you know, you stuck around for a couple years, and when you left and Joe was editor-in-chief, like you got all these guys that have just come in, Bendis, Miller, Kevin Smith, David Mack, like all these guys, and you look at that stuff now and it's like, wait, Marvel was doing that?
We brought David in for Daredevil. You know, he created Echo while we're doing it. We brought J.G. Jones and Devin Grayson for Black Widow, where they created Yelena. Black Panther. I mean, that movie would have never happened without the Marvel Knights series. Let's be honest. It just it never would have landed. And I left when we got out of when Marvel got out of Chapter 11. I left because to me, like, Joe wanted to be editor-in-chief, and I did not want to be a person that went to a 9-to-5 job. I just didn't want it. The challenge was met and accepted, and then by the time I left, because the challenge was, can you make 4 books for Marvel that do better than their regular books, and can you show them how to do it? And I thought, we were so bold and young and stupid that we just thought we could, and we went in and we were just like, we had a certain amount of arrogance, and we just said, no, these comic characters deserve better.
Yeah.
And the stories need to be better, and the art needs to be better, and the coloring needs to be sharper, and the lettering needs to be livelier, and the production should be better. And, I'm still doing it. With my Kickstarters, the production on my books outshines 90% of the stuff that comes out, because I babysit them, like tomorrow. And I am a person I'm a tactile person. Comic book people are tactile people. They want to hold the book. They want to feel the paper. They want to smell it. So I'm still about that. And with Marvel Knights, our books look nothing like the other books that they were putting out. And we did the thing that was smart, was we put out 4 titles every month. So people would buy our whole brand. They bought all the Marvel Knights books. They didn't buy one. Whether they liked it or not, they bought all 4. And and that was the collector in me. Was like, no, we need to do this where we put out. All Marvel wanted to do was, after the first year and the second year, was add books to that 4. And we kept telling them, no, we'll add them when we feel it's time. And that's when we did Black Widow, and we did Marvel Boy, because we felt like these are 2 things that stand out a little bit more than the other stuff. But they wanted us to do. At one point we caught them. They were going to put the Marvel Knights logo on other books, and we shut that down. I remember, I think it was Cheryl Rhodes up there. We went in there and we said, you can't do that. Look at our contract. It has to be from us.
Yeah, and it cheapens the brand too.
Of course. But that's corporate, right? Oh, Marvel Knights selling. Let's make everything Marvel Knights.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we're going to get to your Kickstarter stuff, and there's a reason why creator-owned comics these days are really kind of king, because people see through it. But I don't know where you are now, but there is a book or several books that you can write. You have been involved in everything. I mean, we skipped over this. I don't know if this might be your highest selling book of all time. Ecto Zero.
You know the story with that sold 2.3 million.
Yeah.
The Valiant decided they were only going to print 2 million to keep it collectible.
Yeah.
and then Joe and I went in and said, okay, but you owe us 300. You owe us royalties for 300 for 300,000 more books because you decided not to print them.
Right.
So they had to pay us an extra royalty for books they'd never made. Because I said, you decided not to print. The actual orders were 2.3 million. You decided to underprint. That doesn't mean that we don't get our royalties for the full numbers ordered.
Right.
That's your choice. And we kind of won that battle, which was nice. They had to pay us extra money. That was a crazy time because why, first off, it was the first time we did that was the first actual book Joe and I ever drew together.
Yeah.
Where we worked together. And it sold 2.3 million. That's kind of crazy. The Valiant thing was so insane at the time. We did that. We did that book. We did Ninjak, right? And then I did because Ralph Reese was the inker on Solar, and I think it was Ralph Reese. But anyway, I wound up doing one of the books. It was one of the Valiant books. It was issue 24. That was the first appearance of this team. So I managed to do this one other comic that sold 600,000 copies. And I was like, why am I getting a royalty check of $50,000? What the hell is going on? And they're like, oh, that issue you inked, that was a special issue. And I'm like, okay. It was so crazy. I only did a couple of books for them. I inked a bunch of Solar in a row. And then Joe and I just managed to get 3 issues of Ninjak out into one XO. And that was the end of that.
Yeah.
But the problem with that was they were, the problem with that is there's a lesson in them because they, instead of taking the money they made and investing and making everything better and, they just took the money and all of a sudden all they did is they bought into their own collectability.
Yeah, they did.
And they destroyed the market. Now, those are I remember someone telling me the comic store flooded, so they lined the floors with Valiant comics so they can keep their feet dry. That was an issue where they got greedy.
Yeah.
And then the book suffered and they didn't compensate. They could have paid for better talent and gotten new books and stuff, or they would have shared with the creators a little more for creating new things.
Sure.
And, I don't even know where the company is now anymore, but it was.
Yeah, I don't know. I think because Dinesh doesn't own it anymore. I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah. There was so many lessons with Valiant, but I'm happy to say I was in during the peak of it. And
sure.
I got to do a Deathmate tour with, it was me, Joe Quesada, Dan Panosian, John Ostrander, J. Scott Campbell. I think Joe Mad was there. It was Brandon Peterson and maybe 1 or 2 other people. We did we had the Black Crows tour bus and we did a signing up and down the west coast of California in a tour bus. It was pretty amazing.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, that was it. I don't think it'll ever happen again where comic book artists and writers and y'all were rock stars back then. It really was like that.
It's true. I feel like Peter Frampton, coming back and playing a concert once in a while. No, but it was, you know what? I gotta say, and I do it in all of my paper films books. I put photo credits in the books.
Yeah.
I do it when there was a time Garib hired me to create Black Bull comics for him. And and the way I designed all the books is I gave photo credits because I was like, I want to know what these people look like that make these books. I wish as a kid every comic I bought had the creative team in photos.
Sure.
I would have paid money. I used to remember seeing Foom magazine and they would show some heads and I'd be, that's what Buscema looks like. And, and we grew up with the MTV kind of thinking where we want to see the people that do the books.
Yeah, of course.
So I've always kept that. All my Kickstarters have photo credits. We do that all the time because I think it's the one thing, it's one of the easiest things for comics to do. But then I learned that comic companies don't want to have the stars become more creative, more famous than the characters.
Yeah.
They have to pay them more. So now they do everything they can to poo-poo the creators and make it all about the characters. And that's how you can kind of look at the way things went. after that, you know.
But as long as there's people like you in the industry that are forward thinking in that way, like I feel like if there was ever to be a union, you would definitely be the person that everybody's going to look at.
I've been approached to start a union, to run a union, and I said, "Is it because I'm Italian? Because I don't want to wind up and buried in Giant Stadium." And you know, I love the idea of a union, but at the same time, it's like that would mean I'd have to stop everything I'm doing,
Sure,
to run a union. And I was like, "There's somebody better for that kind of job." I would love a union. I would love that there should be a 401k for Marvel and DC for guys and girls that work there for more than 5 years. They should take care of them. Yeah. There should be medical coverage for anybody who's worked 5 to 6 years. It's not a big deal for them. They're multi-billion-dollar companies.
Yep.
But they nickel and dime the creators. And so then we have to hustle. We have to go to conventions and do sketches and commissions to pay bills because these greedy people, greedy, just so much greed. They can't take care of the creators. It breaks my heart when I see any creator that they have to do a GoFundMe or they have to, Peter David paying medical bills. What the hell, man? You see that and it's so disgusting.
It's sad.
I give to all of them because I'm like, the hell with it. I don't always put my name on it, but I give to all of them.
Sure.
Because it's like these are the people that entertained us so much in our lives.
Yeah.
What's $100, $200 going to do? But all the companies have to do, they have these gigantic corporations where they can get medical coverage for next to nothing because they're covering 10,000 people. And they won't include the people that come through with them every month. These super creators, I call them. Comic people, they're super creators. They do more than a director. They do more than a screenwriter. They envision worlds. And it's just a shame.
Yeah, there's no reason. Look, the Hero Initiative shouldn't have to exist. It shouldn't.
Right.
And it does for the fact that exactly what you just said. And, Jim McLaughlin.
It tries to. They don't have enough money to actually cover everything. They grab a couple of people, do the best they can.
Yeah.
But, we're looking at creators now hitting the 70s and 80s that we know and love. I mean, we keep watching them fall away as well. And these guys should be celebrated. People should be making documentaries about them. And I don't get it. I don't get it. Like it's like our own field doesn't treat them with the respect that they should have.
Yeah.
Walt Simonson. There should be a movie about a documentary about Walt Simonson.
There should be a National King Kirby Day. There should be a Jack the King Kirby Day.
There should be stamps for Jack Kirby, stamps for Neil Adams.
Yeah.
Oh my God, talk about the easiest stamps to make on Earth. They've
already been created.
I also want to celebrate the Mike Kalutas that's still around and the Barry Smiths. Sure. And there's so many guys. Jerry Ordway's. How many books has he done? Like these guys should be kings. We should have them at cons. I don't get it. I'm constantly in awe of how much we don't celebrate.
Well, I try to at least be the ambassador of letting people come on here and talk about this so that we can celebrate because
I talk myself blue. You know that I'm constantly pushing for us to be better at what we all do.
And the shame of it is like as a cartoonist, I'm not an artist, but I know plenty of people that do this for a living and we talk a lot and it's not a healthy profession. You're sitting all day. And so it's like, shame on these companies for not taking care of people. I mean, I look back a lot of obviously we talked about the 90s, but the Image guys, they started this company and they just threw money at people for work. They were just like, here's this, crazy money. And it's like, imagine Marvel and DC just trying to do a sliver of that, like reprint all of these books and then everybody gets their share of royalties.
Well, do you know, like it's now, I've been in the business 40 years, something like that. Yeah. The royalty pool is still at the same number. It's still 5%. So just so you know, if you do comics for big companies, the book has to sell 60,000 copies before the creators get a penny. And every dollar they make over the 60,000 sold, all the creators, the pencils, the inkers, everybody, they split 5%, 5 cents on the dollar. So the company makes 95 cents off profit. They split 5 cents. So this hasn't changed. Okay. And we've had companies where we've had artists and people that could have changed it over the years. Nothing's changed in how many years? The royalty's still the same. The page rates still suck. Yeah. They're not reflective of what's going on. And then you got it's like I said, there's so much that's never been improved on. We lost Neil Adams. We lost the #1 advocate for comics.
Yeah. He was
Neil changed the industry. So did Paul Levitt. So there's a whole bunch of people went in and did things, but nobody's doing anything anymore. And then they wonder why the books don't sell as much and why the creators go elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And people complain about the books. And I'm like saying, well, editorial, let's be honest. They're just trying to hold on to their jobs the best they can.
Yeah.
They're afraid to lose their jobs. And you can't be productive if you're in a state of fear.
No, you can't. If you have to,
you're not going to try out new things if you're worried about being fired. And so this is a very basic rule for creatives. Creatives work well under stress, but they don't work well under certain kind of stress.
Yeah.
And the same thing, same thing with companies. They don't they have all the money in the world to experiment, and yet they'll put out 10 more of the same character books instead of reaching deep and trying to do different genres.
And there's certain people I think that are trying more than others. I think Todd's one of them, and I know you've got the Gunslinger book coming out later this year. Like he's finding talent and saying, like with you, I've heard you talk about it and love to hear your own words of just like do whatever you want.
Yeah, Todd is he's got an empire, right?
Yeah,
Todd's got an empire. He's one of the Image guys that stuck to his own creative. I mean, Jim just went over, to DC, and a lot of those guys had different opportunities and everything, but Todd stuck with his character. And what is it, issue 300 and something's coming out,
350 tomorrow,
right? He still makes the books $2.99 each when everybody's at $4.99 and $5.99. Todd loves what he does. He understands the creative brain. He understands the people around him. And my dealings with him, have been great. He's been nothing but nice to me ever since I met him. Mm-hmm. And he's letting me do whatever I want on the Gunslinger. And you'll understand that when you start getting that book in the fall. It is anything it is a crazy book, but he understands like that I have a different voice than his.
Sure.
And he gets that. And he says, look, I know you know how to write Westerns, but here's what I want. And I'm like, yeah, man, I can go crazy like that. And so guys like that, yeah, I mean, he's sticking true to what he does. I mean, look, he's a businessman, right? So he has both sides of his brains going full steam. Mm-hmm. Creative, the guy's unbelievably creative, great artist, no doubt about it, dynamic. But as a businessman, he's got toy stuff going on. He's always got something going on. He loves what he does, and you can tell when he talks about it. Nobody's forcing him in front of that camera.
No.
He wants to be there, and he wants to talk about it, and I love his energy. And we need to definitely we need a lot more Todds. I look at some of the people in this industry that made millions of dollars.
Yeah,
but they don't really put it back.
Right.
They're taking it and putting it in their pockets, and maybe that's what they want to do, and that's their choice. But we definitely need more Todds. We're putting the money right back into the business and employing a lot of people in the
I had him on the channel about a month ago, and like his energy it was a moment, and it was just like, he is everything that you want to hear from him. And so I'm excited for the Gunslinger book. I'm excited for Sam and Twitch, which he's writing, that comes out, I think, this week. But I can't overlook the fact that, well, you and your wife, Amanda Connor, also responsible for putting a character into another, like the stratosphere with Harley Quinn. And I haven't read a ton of it, but I will say one of my favorite things that you're involved with is this Harley Quinn Zero. Like, this is when I talk about like interesting, unique books that came in the 2000s, this is 2014, but like, what a brilliant idea. Everybody gets to a different page.
It was, I don't know if you know the story. I'll tell it really quick though.
Yeah.
So we just got handed Harley Quinn, and we were going to San Diego. and we had a lunch plan. We had a breakfast plan with Dan DiDio on Saturday or Friday. I'm sorry. Thursday night, I had a dream, and in my dream, the Harley Quinn book was done by different artists, and Harley Quinn got to pick out who her artist is.
Yeah.
I woke up with this idea, and I told Amanda, and I said, I had this dream, and imagine we did a book, blah, blah, blah. And she thought it was a great idea. And so when we had breakfast with Dan DiDio, we pitched him a Zero book, Harley Quinn Zero. So before we start issue 1, we want Harley to pick her own artist out. And he laughed at the idea, and he goes, listen, if you can get 20 different artists to do the book, to sign up for the book, you can do it. So that day, Amanda and I walked around the con, and we walked over to Bruce Timm, we walked over to Adam Hughes, we walked over to Becky Coonan, we walked over, and I said, would you be up to doing 1 page in this Harley book we're doing? And I just want to, it's kind of I'm going to kind of pick on you a little bit at the same time. I'm going to acknowledge who you are, some of them, and everyone in that book said yes. And by the end of the show, I gave Dan the list of people that we signed up, and he's like, okay, start writing it.
Wow.
And so writing it was another crazy thing, because every page, it like there's a continuity in it. Like but it's completely different pages by everybody. And Amanda and I worked very hard to sew that all together. And then we knew by the end it was going to be Chad Hardin. So we had Chad do the last part, because he was already drawing issue 1. Okay. But we made it look like Harley picked the artist out, and it was Chad. And then we did that contest during it and everything. It was one of those things where the editor-in-chief trusted Amanda and I enough to let us do it. Same thing with, Dan DiDio is the guy that called me up one day and said, remember when you used to have those scratch and sniff scratch and sniff books? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I found this company that can do it in a comic book. And I'm like, that's crazy. And he goes, do you want to write a book that you could have 4 smells in the book? And I said, it sounds easy. I said, how hard is it? He goes, well, the smells have to be on a certain pages in a certain area. So you have to write your book around the smells, where it's going to be. Yeah. And then you have to pick the smells out. And he sent us this papers with like 100 different smells. And the one they nixed was we had a Bernie the Beaver was a character in Harley, and he burned at one point, and they had a burnt smell. And we asked for that for a panel with Bernie the Beaver, and Dan DiDio nicely said, I don't want people opening comic books in comic stores and scratching the beaver. So so we're not going to do that one. But we managed to figure out that, we did that. And then we did like Little Black Book where Dan, we pitched the idea of, because we told them while we're doing Harley, we don't want Harley in other books other than Suicide Squad. So I said, but we have a pitch for a team-up book. And I said, if we do it as a team-up book, it makes it more important, because otherwise you guys are going to put Harley in every comic and it's going to completely destroy the character. So we were all about continuity. You had to have continuity. So he let us do a Little Black Book, and that was our Marvel team-up type comic. But a lot of the success we had was because Dan made sure other comics didn't overuse the character.
Right.
So when we did the books, we had over 120-something issues, and it was all in continuity. Another thing that's not available in comics anymore is we had numbering, we had continuity, we had continuity of creators, which is something that's, again, hard to find, So we and I think we got lucky too. I think it was the right people at the right time. Amanda wanted to do different costumes. I wanted to get her away from the Joker. We both didn't want to do a book where she's in an abusive relationship. We didn't understand how much of the mainstream was in that zone at the time. So it was like, we got lucky. I have a career of getting lucky.
I don't know. I don't think it's luck. I do not think it's luck. I think your track record that we're going through right now shows that the decisions that you've come to, whether it's with you and Joe, whether it's you by yourself or you and Amanda, they were the right decisions.
You go by your gut. I'm a consumer, which I don't think a lot of comic people are. Yeah. I think they get to work and then they stop buying comics, or they only buy what they do or whatever. You know, I have my office in a comic shop in Clearwater, Florida, and I see what comes out on a rack every week, and I think that helps me a lot understand what's going on in the world. You know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at what's coming out, you're right. You've got a better idea of the path that you can carve or the path you want to carve. But this, the last thing I want to ask you about this book specifically, did you guys, you and Amanda, do you own the pages for this, or did everybody keep their own pages?
Everybody kept their own pages.
Okay.
I even the cover, we sold the cover at some point, which we like look back on and went, I shouldn't have sold it. But anyway, no, because you know, that was I think I asked one or two people if they still had the pages, and they said they sold them. Okay. Everyone regrets selling it. Like they sold it right away, and then they regret that they sold it. I've had all 20 of those different creators tell me though they keep getting royalties from that book.
That's awesome. That's great. I mean, it's a murderer's row of artists. I mean, it really is. And
it was pretty much everyone we knew at the time that we walked around the con and said hi to and conned them into doing a page. And I always want to try something different too. That's my thing. I kind of like I like to experiment a little bit.
Well, I mean, and it's one of those things. Like I'm big. I know you're a big music fan. I'm a big music fan too. And you know, sometimes there's a B-side or there's an album that you kind of skip over, and 10 years later you come back to it and you're like, oh shit, this was doing this before anybody else was. It's kind of like one of the examples I like to use. Pretty much any Radiohead album. Yeah. If you go back and listen to it, and then you think of the musical trends that followed it, you're like, oh, that's where it came from.
Yeah, you know? I was a B-side guy. I used to buy 45s. If they did the B-side where it wasn't on the album.
Yeah.
You know, I got it. The Police, almost every Police single had a B-side that wasn't on a record.
And for me, it was Pearl Jam. If Pearl Jam released its single, you know, like Dirty Frank or Footsteps or Yellow Ledbetter, those were all B-sides. Those were all B-sides. So in DC, you guys, I mean, the two of you were a powerhouse together. But one of the things I do want to, you were really good friends and neighbors with the late great Darwyn Cooke, and there's a great story about this specific piece. Yeah, I'd love to hear you talk about it because I don't know a lot of.
So when he was doing that, you know, that's a collection of his DC stories, and I think I have some stuff I've done with him in there. It's a fantastic book. It is a wonderful collection. If you don't have it and you love Darwyn, it's a must-get book.
Yes, 100%.
That said, when he did that cover, you'll see like a lot of characters I worked on with him, or characters I could like G.I. Zombie. There's a lot of Jonah Hexes in the cover. There's a whole bunch of characters in there. And he told me at one time when he did the cover, he named the bar Jimmy's because he said pretty much he met everybody that he knows in comics, or at one point or another he met through me. And that he felt like that cover was sort of like him saying like, this is him celebrating that, knowing me and our relationship, and we're great friends, we're best friends, and then when he passed away, it was left to me, that cover. So I have the original.
That's amazing
cover. But you know, he was a guy I saw, like, you know, when he was down here, he would stay down here 6 months a year, and we'd see him, you know, every other day. Like he would come up to the yard. He'd walk through our backyard, and he'd go up with coffees in his hand, and he called Amanda his sister. Like him and Amanda got together, got along great. They both had the same kind of mind. They're both mid-century modern architecture lovers, and they were both like design people. And there's a lot of similarities between Darwyn and Amanda's work if you really get past things, because they both draw characters that look you in the face as a reader.
And I never thought about
that. And because of that, the people that are fans of their work, that's part of it. Is a lot of people draw great characters, but they don't always look the reader in the face, so that they're kind of going for a look or something. But you can read the faces of the characters Amanda and Darwyn do. You know what they're feeling when you're reading it. You can see the emotion, and that's another form of storytelling that, you know, we need more of in comics.
Sure.
I can get into the science of it, but those two have it in their work, and that's why it connects with people so intensely.
I think also there's a piece of it like softness in the characters. You know,
well, there's joy in the characters.
Yeah.
In both of their work celebrates the fun, lively, alive aspect of those characters. There's nobody in Darwyn's books or Amanda's books that look dead-eyed or tired.
Right.
They have a life to them. There's a connection there, and they both have that in the work. They're both like they were happy people. They put their joy into the work. You know, New Frontier is a celebration of everything great DC, and Harley and Power Girl and anything Amanda touches. Those characters they feel alive.
Yeah, they do.
It's hard. I always say it's kind of hard if Amanda puts a year into a book, a character like Power Girl, or even Harley, it's hard for anybody else to grab the character and do what she did. So they always have to do something extremely different.
Yeah. I mean,
they're not going to nail what they did. You know,
no.
Same thing with Darwyn too.
Yeah, to me in the Harley world, there's only like 2 or 3 Harley artists. It's Bruce and it's Amanda, and then you can throw Darwyn in there. Like that's it. You know, everything else just feels rough and not right.
Well, it feels like different. It's you know, everybody likes something different because there's people that came to know Harley from the movies. There's people that came to know Harley from the video games. So you know, everybody brings something different to a character, and that's the beauty of what we do, because so many different representations of the same characters. That's the charm of comic art.
That's the charm of comic art, and I think overall in the Batman universe, that's the charm of Batman, because and that goes through the Rogues Gallery too. It's like there's so many people that have had so many interpretations of these characters, right? And some of them just really stand out.
Oh yeah,
you know. So with you and Amanda have a company and a website, Paper Films, and that basically is the one-stop shop and kind of place to find out anything that y'all have done or are doing. Right. And with that comes you are a Kickstarter MVP. I mean,
I have done a lot of them. I think I was looking the other day. Let me see if I had it here, because I was trying to figure out how many I did, because we did 1 or 2 on the Paper Films too. Mm-hmm. You know, I know. God, I just saw where I was. I know I backed over 3. Oh, I backed over 322 of them. That's a lot. But I think I've done 20. Well, okay, it says 21 created, 22 created, and then I did a couple for Paper Films directly. Jimmy. Yeah, I've done like 24, I think, like that.
Wow. And the newest one, Phantasima.
I call it Phantasima. Everyone pronounces it different. I love that. But Phantasima is how I see it. Not Fanta like the soda, and then Sima, I don't know.
Right. I backed it yesterday. I backed oh yeah, of course. I'm interested. I want to hear your verbal pitch, but the Linsner covers too. I was like, oh, I got to get some Linsner in my life.
I was gonna make the special level of the Linsner covers, and then I realized, his covers reflect the insides of the books a little bit. Yeah. And I was like, let me make the Joe Linsner covers the regular covers. Then I got Dan Panosian, Dave Johnson, and Pierre Brito to do separate covers. And then with every Kickstarter I do, I always do like a special Amanda Connor covers and mystery covers. Honestly, we only print like 100 to 200 of those books. So they're instant collector's items, I say, because there's only a couple of hundred of each one. And actually, if you want to know the print runs of my books, all you have to do is look at my Kickstarter, because I only print 10% extra for damages.
Yeah.
So we don't have like a ton of these books to sell. Like I don't have them. People ask me after the Kickstarter, and I'm like, look, go on eBay. You can find them, but don't yell at me. Don't yell at me if they're $100 and up, because they are. A lot of them are.
Well, that Adam Hughes Pop Kills cover, or that one,
that was crazy. But even a lot of Amanda's covers, they're like 150, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, just buy the Kickstarter. It's a lot cheaper, damn it. No, we have it up on Kickstarter now, Phantasima. We're hitting a goal. We're trying to get to a goal of 38 grand, which is
you're close.
Yeah, I don't know where we are now. If I look, it's probably like 33 or something like that in the ballpark.
Yeah. Still got almost a month to go on it too. So
yeah, well, Kickstarter's come down to the first couple of days.
Yeah.
So we're at 33. It comes down to the first couple of days because that's when most people will back them. They see it, they want to back it. And then you have the 2 weeks in the middle that are like hell. You're just trying to get promotion and and then you got the last week where sadly some people drop out. You get some new ones. And but for this one, so Fantasima, basically it's 3 books. It's a connecting story. You got part 1, 2, and 3. It's Fantasima 1, 2, and 3. And it's the complete story. It's drawn by Pierre Brito. And it's written by me and Craig Whedon, who's a screenwriter buddy of mine. We've done a lot of stuff together. And we've been working on this for over 2 years.
Wow.
It's taken us, because the story itself is almost 90 pages and there's so much involved with it. But it's basically, somebody called it a Jungle Girl book. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of a Jungle Girl book, but it's about a brother and a sister who grow up in Chile and they, in South America, and they get separated at a very young age. And when they get separated, the parents and the daughter go one place, and he goes, and I don't want to give away too much, but what happens is the kid inherits that they're gone. The parents and the girl are gone. And the kid, this is 20 years later, and we see this kid growing up. He's in New York. He owns a $1 billion corporation, and he's just lost. His life, the money is not solving anything for him. Yeah. He misses his family. He just feels lost in the world. And something happens, and another thing happens, and he's at one point he's at a museum showing of photos, and his photographer took pictures of these tribes in South America that no one's ever seen before, and he thinks one of the girls in the tribe looks like his sister, but grown up. So he gets a crew together to go into the rainforest, into Chile, into South America, to try to find this girl to see if it's really his sister. And that's what the story's about. That's the main story. And yeah, it's a little bit of a soap opera, heart-tugging story. At the same time, we deal with the history of this tribe and how they have a connection to the supernatural. And then, of course, the brothers, the bulk of the story is the brother going through the jungle trying to find this tribe, and then he runs into some problems and he runs into some people, and it's very involved, but I guarantee the story wraps up. It's a very satisfying story. I wanted to do a female Tarzan without doing a female Tarzan.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do a story where a lot of adult themes and a lot of the idea of depression, and there's some of that stuff in it, like the idea of dealing with the fact that if you don't talk to people about something, it just grows darker. You have to take your problems out into the light in order for them to be dealt with. So there's a lot of that in it, but it's a beautiful book. I mean, Pierre Brito drew the hell out of this thing, and we have it's available now. We have I always say for people that can't afford it, or they're overseas and they don't want to pay for shipping, we have a digital level for $15, and you get all 3 books, plus whatever stretch goals we hit, because a lot of the stretch goals are digital, so you wind up getting a whole bunch of books. But you get the first 3 issues directly into your mailbox anywhere in the world, and they're PDFs. It's not like these places where you get your digital comics and all of a sudden you don't own them.
Right.
These you actually own. Once you get them, they're yours. You can put them on anything. You can trade them with your friends, which people do. I don't care. They're yours to do what you want with them. But for $15, we offer that. And then the basic level, where you get the 3 books. These are the Joe Linsner covers. It's $40 for the 3 books. They're oversized books. They're the print quality. If you've never backed my stuff, it's like we use the best printing. I pay my guys really well, so the Kickstarter is cool. But it's $40 for the 3 books. I guarantee when you feel them, you're gonna say, "Yeah, okay, this is worth it." I get why it is. And then we have different levels from there. I have a retailer level.
Yeah.
For we've gotten 1 retailer so far to back it. It's hard to get retailers to back anything. But I have this thing with 36. They get 36 books 36 sets of the books for only $200, and
That's not bad.
it's a lot cheaper than the singles because I want retailers to have them in the stores. They can actually put all 3 books. And again, these are limited in copies, so they're going to be selling things that they're not thousands of copies. Literally, it's going to be a couple of hundred sets.
Yeah.
And that's it. So they can put any price they want on the books. The retailer can sell them for 20, 30, 40 bucks. It doesn't matter. That's up to them, okay? But I always try to push the retailer level because I'm like, especially with this one, they're going to get all 3 books. So they literally could put all 3 out, or they could put one out 1 month, one out 2. I am not coming out with these in another format or another. Right. So if they get them, and so we're doing a Kickstarter, and like I said, we're hoping to get people to back it, or if they've never done a Kickstarter from me, all your stories of I backed the Kickstarter and I didn't get my books have nothing to do with me. I've done 20 something. I've delivered it to every single person that ever backed it. I get them on time. Yeah. I get them sent right to your house. And you do get stretch goals. So the more people back it, the more books you get. Sometimes it's extra books. Sometimes it's sticker sheets. Sometimes it's all extra stuff. But I've never not delivered. And I don't have a single customer that's ever has a complaint. There is not one, because even I've had one guy that, boy, he was a lot to handle. And even him, I took care of. I registered mail. I did everything I could to make him happy. And in the end, because it's very important for me, because a lot of these Kickstarters, I only get like 1,000 people backing it. This one's only at 455 people. It's a lot. And at the same time, it's not a lot for something I'm doing. So when I have somebody as a customer, I make sure I want them as a customer for life. So I make sure they're excessively happy with packing, I pack the packages. Me and Patrick, my buddy, pack everything. I babysit the printers. I babysit the coloring. The spot varnish on the books. Like, there's a lot of care put into it, and in the end, I can make a lot more money writing comics for other people. I have to tell you.
Oh, sure.
But I think for me, this is the project I want to do now, and I want to show people that we want to raise this art form a little bit more, and I do it, and my books have mature themes and mature audience stuff. Yeah. But I hope everybody gives it a look. I hope people check it out. And, when you back it and you're backing it and you're giving $15 or $40, understand that the profit is going to everybody involved with the books. It's not going to pay for a building or somebody's jet flying across. It's actually going into the printing. It's going into the hands of the guys who drew it. And everybody involved gets taken care of. So, if you want to understand where your money goes, and again, it's cheaper than a meal for 2 people one night out. It's a lot cheaper. And I always say, if you just want the digital, it's $15. It is not going to kill your budget. I have people tell me, well, I don't have the budget. And I'm like, it's $15. Do what you want, but it's not a lot of money. And we do the digital because we want to make sure people, we have people in Japan, people in New Zealand, that want the books, but they don't want to pay for shipping. And we don't set the shipping prices, obviously. That's set by the post office. But I want to make sure people can get the book. So the digital is very important to me all the time. And I'm happy when my digital numbers are high.
And it's super important. Like we've been talking about throughout this whole conversation, you're supporting creators directly in this way. And so that's, if we want comics in general, just in general, we have to support the people that make them.
Yeah, I imagine when I was a kid, if they had Kickstarter and I had Jim Strenko, Bernie Wrightson, Barry Smith, Jim Starlin, Paul Lacey, doing Kickstarters for stuff they wanted to do, I would be backing every single one of them. 100%. I don't care what it would cost. I would be backing them because nothing would make me happier, to be able to know that instead of paying the money for the comic, it's actually going to those guys.
Right.
To me, that's like the coolest part of this is I don't have a company. Like, I'm not Boom, let's say, putting out a book that the creators get a piece of. I'm actually, and I say paper film, it's just me and Amanda, Patrick. But it's actually just us. It goes right to us, and then we distribute everything. And we hand pack it, and we babysit it. Today alone, I spelled one thing wrong in this book, and I had to go back to John J. Hill and say, look, on this page, We need to change it. And, you know, it's like it never ends until it goes to the printer.
Right.
We actually added 4 more pages to the book right before we did the Kickstarter because I felt like when I read it again, and I read it like 100 times, I felt like it needs one more scene so I can feel like a little better here. Like I found this part. And that's the beauty about doing your own book. If I called up Marvel and DC or anybody and said, hey, I want to add 4 more pages because I think there's a scene where they would be like, no.
Yeah, they'd be like, fuck off.
And you know, and I don't think anybody minds more pages, getting more pages in their book.
I don't think I've ever been, this comic book's too long.
Yeah. I mean, and the average comic now, you know, is 20 pages, right?
Yeah.
So it's not 22 anymore, it's 20. So it's like it keeps. I'm waiting for them to say 18 at some point. Then, you know, and we look at comics now. I mean, it's printed with the same paper of the inside of the comic. It's like there's no cover stock anymore. And these are multi-billion-dollar corporations that can just make things better in a second. But I get it because I have to order when I do these Kickstarters. I order 2,000 or 3,000 books, and it's like, you know, I have to pay top premium price because it's like it's just they're short runs, right? We have some of the covers that we've done only 200 copies, right? So I have to do a plate for it. I have to do everything for it. There's so much that goes into it, but I got to tell you, man, I am so proud of the books. When people pick them up, I'm always going, here, check it out. You know,
that's awesome. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, if you're proud of your work, then at the end of the day, what else can you really ask for? Obviously, you want it to be in people's hands. And for anybody watching, I will throw the link down below for the Kickstarter and also Paper Films. All of Jimmy's links will be down there. But you know, I'm
getting rich $1 at a time.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you know, but like you said before, you're enjoying what you're doing. You're in charge of your
I
own
love
thing.
comics. Look, you see me on Twitter. I push everybody else's campaign. Yeah. I lift people. I don't push them down. I new guys. We talk, guys and girls. I push their work. I'm happy to back them. Obviously, I back a gazillion.
Sure.
But I'm happy to. You know, I feel like we're all in the same hobby, and on some level, we should all be supporting each other on some level.
Yes, I agree. And I think there's just, you know, these days with comics, everybody's got something to say. And
yeah,
you know, it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, you know, I gravitate more towards reading creator-owned stuff, you know, Image and Dark Horse and stuff. But every once in a while, something slips through these Marvel and DC cracks, and I'm like, okay, there's still a glimmer of hope, you know, like
there's some good stuff that comes out. You know, I feel like I feel like it's always been the same on some level. You have to hunt for things, right?
You do. Yeah.
The thing I noticed, and I think we hit on this earlier, is that we don't have the steady teams on books anymore. No. And I think the characters suffer from that. All the books I've ever done really well on, as far as like people know my work, have been like more than 5 or 6 issues. It's usually, you know, Harley's like 125. I think Jonah was like 105. Mm-hmm. Even Power Girl, it was 12 issues, but we also did put Power Girl in like 30 other books, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like there was a consistency with our Power Girl as well. And then Marvel Knights, you know, we did Daredevil obviously over a year, and I did Garth, Garth, and Steve Dillon did a lot of Punishers together. Welcome Back, Frank, and all that stuff. And you know, we got known as the Punisher team back then. And I think when you have a team like that, stories stand out. So Welcome Back, Frank will always be a popular Punisher
story.
Yeah, and the first 12 issues of Daredevil we did, or first bunch with Kevin Smith, will always be there. And I just think there has to be a little more continuity with creators, and that doesn't happen until the companies start taking better care of the creators. Because creators right now have to hustle and look for whatever the next job is. And they're not always, and the companies want to restart. How many times are they going to restart these books over and over? Number one, it's traditional that you gain new readers with a number one, but by issue 3, you lose more readers than what would do in the book before, the series before. And knowing this, they keep doing it anyway, because they have an opportunity now to put 40 covers on a book, but that's going to wear down real quick.
It is. I mean, it's already wearing down. I mean, I think there are certain artists, one that comes to mind that she did as many covers as she could, and now they gave her the keys to Ultimate X-Men as Peach Momoko.
Oh yeah,
I think she just worked and worked and worked, and it's like whatever she's going to do with this, I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Peach is a friend of mine in Amanda's, okay, and she's worked hard for the past 5-6 years, like constantly, and yeah, she's doing what she's going to do, and then when she's out of that contract, she's going to do her own stuff.
Oh yeah,
and she's going to do very well. But she's one of those creators that is just great. I had her on. I got her to do some Painkiller Jane stuff for me that we did in the last Kickstarter, and she's a talent that wants to tell stories, and it's about time she's getting to do that. But in order to break into the market, she did covers for a while, and she made a name for herself. Now the hard part. Now she's got to dig in and but she's going to do great. She's just she's another little force of nature. I adore her. Yeah.
I mean, people do not know what's going to come when she goes full creator on and does some horror stuff. It's going to be amazing.
I look forward to that. I think the X-Men stuff will be great, whatever it is it's going to do. But we're not going to see really her go crazy until she starts doing her own stuff. And that's what most artists. And in the end, look, I wish Walt Simonson just kept doing his own books. And, there's a bunch of guys. I wish somebody would just give Jerry Ordway money and say, hey, Jerry, what do you want to draw?
Yeah, there you go.
Go do it. We'll back it, man. We'll back it. Rick Leonardi, I feel the same way. Rick Leonardi. There's so many guys that I just wish, they had better opportunities for their work.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and it's a larger conversation, especially. And there's, maybe what the big two really need to do is be like, okay, we're just going to do miniseries from now on. We're not going to do ongoing titles because I don't know if the solution is having 5 or 6 or 10 or 15 fucking Batman books. But when Mark Silvestri did Deadly Duo, I'm like, every week, when that comes out, I'm buying it because it's better than everything else that's happening.
Yeah, I have a couple of ideas how to solve both companies' issues, but I won't say them publicly because
sure.
I just don't. It's taken me a lot to get to that. I will say I have a plan for DC if they ever wanted to pay me to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give it away.
No.
And I'm just gonna say that they need to slow down a little bit.
Definitely
need to slow down a little bit and take another look at their audience and interact with them and find out. Look, now we don't have these companies showing up at cons anymore, so they don't even have the feedback from the people anymore.
No, they don't want to interact.
And that's bad. You can't count what's on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as what people are doing because it's very deceiving. Those things are very deceiving. All you have is a lot of people complaining on those things. And but there's people every day that walk in a comic shop, and I know because I'm in a comic shop, that never look on the internet. They just go to the store to buy their comics.
Exactly. And when you listen to a bunch of people, and look, I am talking to a YouTube audience, but my audience is very much my type of people.
Right.
Okay. But when you're talking to a bunch of people that may not even be real or ever leave their fucking house, talk to another person or understand what's happening in the world, you can't take their advice on what's working and what's not. You go to the comic book stores, you go to the conventions, you talk to people that buy physical books. I've got plenty of ideas too. I mean, look, and I listen to a lot of these people voice their opinions, and I'm like, but you're not in the shit. To use a great phrase, you are not in the shit.
I'll give you a little insight. So I think I have 500 people back to Kickstarter so far, maybe whatever the number is. I haven't looked at it lately, but it's like around there, right? But I'm on Twitter. I have 83,500 followers. So, and I put up 4 times a day. I put up the link for Fantasema because I know people get on different times. Blah blah.
Sure.
Blah, right?
And the algorithm is
4 or 5 times a day. Okay. Yeah. So I have 83.5 thousand people following me, and let's assume 1/8 of them are the ones that actually back in the Kickstarter, or even 1/4 of them.
Sure.
So what are those other 83,000 people doing? I'm connecting with people on social media, but it's not always a connection, you know. And it's like people follow you. I wish 10% of the people on my Twitter followers backed my Kickstarter, because if they did, I'm sorry, I wouldn't be here with you right now. I'd be outside in the street dancing. You know?
Yeah, drinking Cristal and in your gold cup in your Speedo.
And it's amazing to me how many people I talk to every day, and they never back the Kickstarters, because I see every name. I fill out all the form. Me and Patrick sit there, fill out all the form, and fill out all the. I see every name.
Sure.
That goes on those packages, and I see people that say they swear they buy everything I do, and I never see their name on it. You know, and it always blows my mind. And it's their prerogative. They don't have to buy it, and they can follow me because they like some old work I did or whatever.
Yeah.
I wish I can figure out a way to get some of them to kind of go in there and say, hey, you know what? Let me give it, Jimmy. Let me give it a shot. Let me buy the digital. It's cheap enough. Let me read the book. And I have given away free stuff, and I have given away PDFs. I did a humble bundle that I gave away pretty much everything for next to nothing.
For charity.
But it's so hard to get people to commit to something, you know. And it's exhausting, because even at the con, you put the books out. I get guys come over. Yeah, you know, I just paid the Thor guy $400 to take a photo with him, so I don't have any money left for comics. I'm like, it is a comic show, you know.
Well, it's funny because like most creators don't have a sliver of the outgoingness that you and Amanda have. Like they don't. You know, you're part of a generation, just as I'm the next generation of people that had to interact with each other. We didn't hide, you know, phone calls or going outside and hanging out. But it's sad. I mean, I'm a comic seller. I sell all old books. I do a live sale every week, but since the 2020, I've been probably 125 comic stores all up and down the West Coast, and they all have their different identities. And it's like, it's kind of the wild, wild west of small business owners.
Yeah.
You know, it's the last of its kind. And there are some stores that I walk into, I'm like, do you know what's happening in comics? Like, there's nothing in your store that reflects anything I ever want to associate with, because I'm, you know, but this direct thing that we have with creators now in Kickstarter and you know, the Substack stuff and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I wish we had that when I was a kid, because you get to know the people that are creating this stuff. And for the most part, with the exception of a couple of bad eggs, comic creators are great people to want to get to know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, that OAX show, every one of those creators was a pleasure to talk to.
Yeah.
They're so nice. They're generous. Amanda and I, people come over to us. We talk to them. We don't just blow them off. We sit there and we chat with them. Why would I be there if I wasn't going to interact on some level? Like, why would I don't want to waste people's time.
No. Or your own.
With the Kickstarters, I'm hoping to build up the audience a little bit. And, you know, I see what guys like Brian Polito, I'm so jealous of Brian. I helped him get started, which is, you know, I gave him advice when he started, and he blows me out of the water, like with his audience. You know, I obviously, I still have a lot to learn with everything. And I'm constantly reading, I'm constantly listening to people. Except for the people telling me what not to do all the time.
Yeah.
But I constantly, you know, I'm trying to figure it out. You know, I'm talking to you here today. I'm hoping 4 or 5 people say, yeah, let me hit that link, see what he's got going, you know. And that's what you do. You go out, you put yourself out there, I'm already putting myself there. I put the work out there. That has my name on it. You know, it's not an easy thing to do. And because you're giving away a piece of yourself. But I love doing it. I'm a guy, I'm going to love comics till the day I drop. I have comic art. I have comic books. I have trade books. I have models. I have statues. I've got everything to do with my don't let this background fool you.
Yeah. You're fanboy.
Let me turn it this way for a minute. And
look at all that. Look at that.
Everywhere, dude. Everywhere. You know, this is the clean. You're seeing the clean view of my.
Sure.
Let me get this fixed. Hang on.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, but it's in my blood, and so anyway, listen. I got to wrap it up because I have to have another thing to go to. But I just wanted to say, Dave, thank you. This was a lot of fun, and we should do it more often because there's a lot to talk about.
Yes, we have. I didn't even get to ask you why you don't like Return of the Jedi, but we'll get to that some other time.
Oh, because that's an easy one. It's too long. Once the little teddy bears come in, it kind of lost it for me. And it was like the beginning was so great. Like the first 20 minutes was so great.
Sure.
And then it kind of went sideways for me a little bit, I felt like it peaked in the beginning, and no movie should peak in the beginning.
The end's pretty amazing too, but
the end is good too. The middle is a little creative editing, less teddy bear. I felt like Lucas was trying to sell more toys in that one.
Yeah, well, he won that game.
Yeah, and but I didn't hate it. It's out of the first three, it's my least favorite one though.
Fair enough.
The first one did something nothing else ever did.
Oh my god!
And then the second one was like flawless, And then the third one was like, oh, okay, got a little lazy there, but whatever. We can do this whole show on that.
Yeah, we'll talk movies and music next time, but yeah. So the Kickstarter link is going to be down below. Paperfilms.com. Jimmy's you're on Twitter and Instagram a bit. Anything else to throw out there before we wrap it up?
Oh, that's it, man. Just that's it, and we're good to go.
All right. Well, I will see you in a couple weeks at Emerald City. Yeah, I'll be there Thursday and Friday, just hanging around, walking around. But appreciate everything and appreciate your time and everything that you've put out there and everything to come.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for watching another great interview. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll have Jimmy back on the program pretty soon. Direct edition, links down below, all that stuff. Hit the like button. Do your due diligence. Bye. Welcome back to another episode of the West Coast Avengers.